What is your relationship with shame? If we don't have a good understanding of how shame impacts us, it can be far more painful than it needs to be. In this video, we'll cover why shame is so painful and how to cope when it shows up. I'm well acquainted with shame. It was something that was massive in my life, and I had to overcome my real fear of what it was and how to approach it. So in order to do that, the big thing that helped me a lot was first to understand how shame is used. Shame is a culturally used device that keeps us in line with what we deem culturally acceptable. That can come down to a family. The nucleus of your family will have certain idealized concepts that they're like, hey, this is who we are, this is how we move, and you may have been shamed to fit into that family unit. It's common in Western culture. This is a very commonly used tool because it's an easy way to keep a kid in line if you make them feel like they're an absolute monster for doing something that you don't want them to do. That shame that is poured upon a child when faced with something that they know that if they do, they will feel like they don't belong within that family unit becomes the very thing that keeps them from exploring and expanding and owning who they are. And you, in fear of losing that support system that you're in as a child, will comply. It's a natural thing to do, so it's a very effective tool. But it doesn't motivate you in an intrinsic way. It's an outward motivation that can be very punitive and emotionally abusive. The second thing that you do is recognize it in your own life. How is it being used on you? And how are you personally using it on those around you? This was something that I really was startled to discover when I began to delve into shame. I was reading a number of authors when I was in therapy and recognizing that there's shame we call, you do something wrong and you feel like, oh, I'm ashamed. I can't believe I did that. We all have that. There's toxic shame, and this is what we're talking about, toxic shame. The shame that when you do something, you think that you yourself are broken. You yourself are now outside and not tolerable to those in that organization, group, whatever, that dynamic, that relationship that you're in, will no longer accept you because of who you are for what you have done. That's toxic shame because it changes the nature of how you believe in yourself. And when you heap that onto somebody else, if you say to your child or a friend, who are you? What on earth are you doing? That movement from this was a mistake to attacking an individual's worth is toxic shame. So recognize, is this something that's attacking your sense of well-being and worth? Or are you attacking somebody and making them wonder about their worth? If that's the case, stop it. And if you are feeling attacked, ignore it. It is not real. That shame is a facade. It is a veil. I call it the veil of shame that you get to walk through and see what's on the other side if you have the courage to face that cultural trope that is being placed upon your shoulders to keep you in line with what the people in charge have decided is the most important thing. And often, these are not things that are morally decrepit in other organizations or they're unacceptable in other spaces. It's just this group is like, you can't do that. I saw it in sports all the time, right? When I was growing up, I'm a Gen X guy. My coach would yell at us, you pussies, running like a bunch of girls. Get your asses moving, right? I don't want to be a girl. I'm a man, right? That whole concept of that placed upon me would cause me panic and I would run harder and do more. But there's plenty, this shaming, right? Not only are they shaming me, we're shaming a whole gender of women, that saying that we are somehow less fit to be existing on this athletic team because we're like women? Anyway, you get the point, right? It just becomes rampant when it runs free. So how do you overcome shame? Well, it takes courage. Courage is the only way. Shame is literally not a real thing. Now, when I say that, it's not real as in it can't physically touch you, it can't physically harm you, but it is absolutely real when you think about the emotional impact that it has on us. It is real. And I know this because of my own life. When I was a little boy, from the age of 4 to 8, I was violently molested and abused by a teenage boy that my parents were taking care of in our home. My parents were kind people. They had brought many people into our home, all of whom were great and became close family friends. This particular person was himself violently abused and molested, and he continued the cycle on me. And it was a thing that I buried deep, and through years of therapy, I discovered in myself. And it was in 2018, after I had discovered it, I was coming to terms with it. I just found out I was giving a kind of TED Talk at the National Speakers Association about my coaching theories and performance and mindset and how to be authentic. And this was what I was talking about. But when I got my memories back about 3 weeks before this talk, it changed everything in my life. I was ashamed that it had happened to me. I was ashamed that I had been abused as a man. I didn't want this to be a part of my life. I was praying that I would go to the therapist and tell him about the memories that had come to me, and he would tell me that I'd made them up. I was hoping somehow that that would be my reality, rather than facing the shame of my brokenness, that I perceived I was broken from this abuse. It was really, really hard for me. But I decided, because I had read all of these things about shame and how it was something that, when you have this happen to you, you diminish yourself and it has nothing to do with who you are. And I thought, you know what, here's an opportunity for me to step through this wall of shame that I've been hiding from, so significantly hiding from, that I wouldn't even allow myself to remember it until I had learned enough self-compassion to allow the memory to surface. And I gave a talk, and I talked specifically about how that abuse and the violence of what I had experienced with this person had impacted every aspect of my life, and my ability to show up real in front of people because of the shame that I felt. And I have spoken in many, many places in my life. I like to speak. Here I am talking to you. I like it. You can put me in an audience of 20,000, 30,000 people. I'm game. I don't get nervous. I get excited. But when I finished that talk, I was shaking to my core. I could barely walk down the stairs. And I thought I had ruined my career. That is the power of shame. It was drenched over me when I finished that talk. I thought, no one's going to want to talk to me. Look how broken I am. That is shame. Look how broken I am. I am not fit for these people. This is the thought process that was in my head. Now, I had walked to that wall of shame, and I had stood before it and decided to step through. But in stepping through, and never having done this before to this level, I felt tainted by what I had done, and I felt incapable of meeting what I believed would be the absolute rejection of me. And you know what? I got podcast interviews. I had people reaching out to me saying that they had had similar experiences and had never had the courage to step up and say these things, and to feel so relieved to know that there were others out there like them. It changed things for me in the best way. This became something from my past that I felt would ruin me. And it was something that did nothing. It didn't catapult me anywhere. It didn't change me in any way. It was just an event in my life that I held such importance with, because the ideas of what I think that those incidents did to my own personal worth, my own value, the way that they touched me, I was convinced that shame would ruin me. In fact, I was more afraid of shame than I was of death. That's the power of shame. But when you walk through it, when you step to the other side, and you recognize you're still breathing, you still have a chance, then you can know, man, shame does not have to be a part of my life. You can stop distributing it, you can stop carrying it, and you can walk through that wall. You find your biggest shame and you walk through it, and shame will quit touching you as long as you continue to confront it. And that's a powerful thing. So, if you want to improve your relationship with shame in that you ignore it and don't care anymore, these are the steps to follow. Get strong. Be courageous. Recognize what shame is being used to control you with and how it's hitting you, and tell yourself, even if you don't believe it, tell yourself, this is not real. Walk through it, and on the other side of that, the people who see you and value you and love you will be standing there with open arms. Anyone who shames you after you have walked through that is not someone you should be giving your time to. It is a great watershed moment. Embrace the fear, find your courage, step through the other side, and it changes your life like it did mine. You will see it change your life. So if this is something you're struggling with, you're feeling that shame, you might also be wondering how to feel worthy of love. Stick around, I got a video coming up on that. Make a comment, tell me if you struggle with shame or if you've distributed it like I did to my own children. I had to apologize for that. Let me know what's going on. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for joining me. I'm James Burnham.